So with that, we're going to turn it over to our speaker today, Miss Julie Kettles. Miss Julie is a life coach. She's a speaker. And yeah, Miss Julie, come on, introduce yourself. Tell us about yourself, and then give us something about mental health that we can take away from this.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I live in Newport Richey, Florida. I guess some people are not from Florida on here, right? Mostly. So, and I am married to my husband. I've been married for 32 years and lived most of a long time here, but grew up in Clearwater, actually. We raised 4 kids here in this house, and been at the same church for 24 years now, which is Calvary Chapel Worship Center in Newport Richey. And so what I want to share with you today about mental health and what's helped me a lot, that I've kind of put 2 different things together that helped me. And it goes back to, just to briefly touch on, my daughter, Heidi, who is my oldest and only daughter. The rest are boys. She overdosed on cocaine laced with fentanyl in 2020, just before the lockdown, March 3rd, was her brain death in Tennessee, where she lived for a while with her boyfriend and her kids, and 4 kids that she gave birth to as well. So we lost her right before the lockdown in 2020, and leaving behind her 4 children that we were trying to get custody of temporarily, but became now permanent. And with that, I ended up losing her children to be adopted out a year later, because of an unfounded accusation against my husband that happened when we fostered a friend of hers many years ago, and when they were teenagers. Long story, won't go into it, but that was what was held against us. And we were unable to get our grandchildren, her children. So we lost her and her 4 children. We are in their lives, but not in a full relationship. And Rod, when you just said about grandparents, I relate to that. And it's so hard because we lost her, but we lost what came from her children, and we're not really in a relationship with them. And we could have been shut out for good. And we were told that right before they adopted them. The family that had them, they were in 2 different families, but the family who had them for over 9 months, a wonderful Christian family that just really love them. We can tell they really love them. We talk about love. We believe, that doesn't mean anybody's perfect, but there's a lot of pluses to the family that they're in, and they took all 4. They had to, so a lot of pluses, but a lot of heartache. And through that, before that, my husband and I went through a marriage crisis where we were apart by law for a year and a half. And I had to kind of find myself again. And I have a special needs son too with Downs. It's the middle boy. But was able to get him into a home through that crisis, and, became an empty nester, and was finally able to work on me. And I went through a 12-step program, not because of drugs or anything else, just to work on me. Hurts, habits, and hangups with Celebrate Recovery. So with that, I grabbed hold of the Serenity prayer more because I'd heard about it, like most people have, but really began to know and pray the Serenity prayer. And then during, I was invited into a counseling session with my second granddaughter, who had a counselor to work through the losses of, because basically their father, was kicked out of the picture because of all that was against him. And he's now in jail on behalf of my daughter's death. But anyway, she was in counseling. Then I learned of the circle of control. So I don't know if any of y'all have heard of the circle of control. It's on the internet all over. They talk about the circle of influence too, but I tend to just call it the circle of control. What I began to realize and have, I believe, a revelation of is that the Serenity prayer and the circle of control can kind of go hand in hand. So that's kind of the foundation of my coaching, which I was already a life coach, but didn't really move into that until after she died, and definitely more into a grief focus, or a grief pain point is becoming my specialty. I don't want to say I'm a specialist fully yet, but moving into that. So I think with grief and loss, this circle of control and the serenity prayer, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, living one day at a time, one moment at a time, and then it goes on even more. The prayer's longer than what most people quote. And I'm not even quoting all of it, but to know that God, that we need help outside of ourselves. And I fully believe that we need God, but to know we need help outside of ourselves is huge for grief and loss, for mental health in general. And then to look at the circle of control as a kind of a way to journal it out is one way I put it. It's basically just a piece of paper with a circle on it. If you look online, all kinds of people have it and they charge money for it, etc. I mean, not, but they use it a lot in children's counseling. And some of y'all may know more about it than even me, but they used it with my granddaughter. That's when I first found out about it. And I think it's beautiful and so essential for I guess you could say, the more mental health conditions or issues we have or anybody has. A lot of our problem is feeling out of control. And I think the grief beyond just death and losses of all different types, right? Divorce, a parent out of our lives that's alive, anything. I mean, we all know, right? But to realize loss hits us, all of us. And, I didn't totally experience loss until I went through my marriage crisis and then the loss of my daughter, even though my mom died. As far as a life-changing loss, that's one way I put it, life-changing. Because how else do you know what I mean? It's those losses that maybe one friend, you're sad, but it's not a life-changing loss. Another friend may be that way, or your sibling or your parent or your child, whoever it is, So there's no definition. Talk about unconditional. There's no definition to who's going to get hit and when and where and how that's going to look. It's just, there's no way to predict. But for me, that helped tremendously, especially with COVID going on. But I think a lot of the problem is feeling out of control. And we talk about negative control. That's not where I'm going right now. I'm talking more about the individual person and helping mental health, my own mental health, helping others' mental health. When we feel totally out of control, we're going to do all kinds of things. When we are focused on what is out of our control, the loss of that person or, whatever it is, that's when we're going to do all kinds of negative things, is kind of my simplest, since I only have a few minutes, is all kinds of negative things are going to come out of that. The D's, disappointment, I can't even think of all of them, but depression is one of them, right? All these things all these negatives are going to come out of that because we're focused on what's out of our control and we don't know what to do about it. We don't know what to do with it. So I believe firmly in dealing with that and helping people let go of what's out of their control if they haven't and they can't, or they're having a hard time letting go of what's out of control, or just giving it time, especially with the loss of somebody that's life-changing. But then to help them focus on what's in their control, I think is huge. And I think there's a lot more in our control than we realize. There's a lot more. And where does it stem? Where does it definitely go back to? What's inside of us? What's inside of us? What's inside of our mind? But then so many people don't think that they can control their mind. They can work on it, not like this, but they don't realize they can learn to work on their mind and their thoughts and even their decisions, even their attitude, even their perspective. I think perspective is huge. Learning every situation, our perspective in life, kind of like we've all been talking, but our perspective of each and every situation we go through is huge. So that's what that's what I learned to do in my life. That's what I had to do through this, because I went right from my to going to telling my grandkids they're never going to see their mom again, to what are we going to do with the kids? When are we going to take the kids in? Oh, now is this thing going to come up in my past? And then getting cut out and told like you're not even supposed to have your last visit, but the social worker fighting for that for us, and then saying you better take your last visit because we don't know what we're going to do, not knowing if we'd ever see our grandkids, having to let go of them and having to move on. Just one thing I did in that, more than one thing, that because I learned how to do this and kind of like, okay, I can't control that. I can't control COVID. I can't control when something's going to happen because everything got delayed in COVID, if y'all remember. So here we were trying to do paperwork between Florida and Tennessee, and even just that took longer, and when's it going to happen, and when's it going to happen, all this delays. So every day I had to wake up, what's in my control? I have to do everything I can to get my grandkids. And God, it's up to you. If we're supposed to get them, if that's supposed to be part of the calling, because I take my calling and my purpose in life very seriously, what God wants me to do. So if this is part of your plans for our lives, then you'll give us favor. And if it's not, then you're going to shut the door. Well, he did. He shut the door. And in one sense, I was more okay with that than probably a lot of people would have, because I gave that into his hands to begin with. But I had to constantly say, what's in my control today? What can I do? Because if I don't do everything I can do to get my grandkids, I will beat myself up. I will have regrets. And I knew I had to eliminate myself in that picture and know that then it was outside of myself. And so then I would do what was in control, and then I'd have to release what was out of my control. And one of the things I did was I entered into a coaching program that was a year commitment. I literally signed on the day that my grandkids were adopted. And I purposely, it was in the process of me doing and deciding all this. And then I literally made myself sign on, say, this is what's in my control. This is what I got to focus on now. I got to focus on me and moving forward in my business and my calling, And then another thing is we got to get in touch with one of the ladies who got Heidi's kidney, my daughter's kidney. Heidi was a donor. So this is one of the positives that came out of her death. I gave 4 people life. She gave 4 children life, and she gave 4 people life in her death through being a donor. So that's one of the positives that I can pull out of a lot of negative stuff. And we met the young lady that I purposely put it on her schedule because she lived in Tennessee. She lives in Tennessee. We met her the next night so that I had something to look forward to after saying goodbye to my grandkids. So that's just a little bit about all of it. But I really think it's one method we can use to help ourselves and others with mental health. So thank you.